Welcome to all of you who are already signed in for this meeting. I'm Beth Drucker. I'm the president of Go Green Wilmette and the founder and co-facilitator of Go Green Illinois, which is a loose affiliation of community-based environmental groups. I want to acknowledge meeting co-planners, Liz Kunkel, who's the president of Go Green Winnetka and a current forestry commissioner in Winnetka, and King Poor, former trustee of Winnetka and very engaged in this topic. Today's meeting is the fourth in a series of meetings designed to help decision makers, elected officials, village staff, and key advocates from suburban Chicagoland communities communicate and collaborate on the issues of leaf blowers. For this meeting, we have people registered from 26 different suburban communities and several organizations, including the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association, or ILCA. We've invited ILCA to share their industry perspective on leaf blower regulations with us. We will work very hard to keep the meeting to 1 hour. To do that, we'll be adhering closely to the agenda, and speakers are strongly encouraged to keep their comments succinct and within the time allotted to them. This will give everyone the time that they deserve. This makes our meetings a bit like speed dating. Speakers are going to have just enough time to share critical information and spark interest, and attendees can choose to follow up with speakers to learn more. So more and more communities are considering limiting the use of leaf blowers, especially gas-powered leaf blowers, for many reasons. Each week seems to bring another headline or article about communities grappling with the issue, including recent articles by James Fallows in The Atlantic and Margaret Renkel in the New York Times. Yet most communities do not have leaf blower restrictions in place beyond noise ordinances that could be but rarely are used to restrict the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. Working together on this issue across our boundaries will be the best way to ensure success in our towns and across our region. Our goal today is to help your community address this environmental and health issue by learning from other neighboring communities. We're going to hear from 6 of these communities: Highland Park, Winnetka, Evanston, Glencoe, Wilmette, and Northbrook. They are in various different stages of working on this issue. If your community is not on the agenda but has a short report to make that would be helpful to other attendees, please indicate so in the chat, and we'll try to arrange to call on you after the scheduled presentation if time allows. But another reminder, please be sure to remain on mute during the entire program unless you've been called on to speak. There are those who feel that restrictions should cover all leaf blowers, not just gas-powered ones. Some communities are considering that. There are those who feel that restrictions should include all lawn care equipment, not just leaf blowers. Some communities are considering that. And there are those who feel that there should be no restrictions whatsoever. At the same time, many communities are working to reduce the use of all leaf blowers all year long due to growing concerns about the ecological impact that leaf blowing has on soil health and habitat for birds and beneficial insects. I've heard it described once as subjecting beneficial insects and habitat to hurricane-force winds on a weekly basis. Even a year or two ago, people really weren't adding that into their list of concerns about the growing use of leaf blowers. So we reviewed much of the background information about leaf blowers in our previous meetings. Those meetings are available at the Go Green Wilmette YouTube channel. So if you want to get more of the background information of this process, you can see those meetings. But because most of you are already pretty familiar with the problems of leaf blowers that many of us are concerned about, we're not going to spend much time on that issue. If you want more general background information, again, visit our previous meetings or go to quietcommunities.org, which is a national organization that has a lot on their website about leaf blowers. And if you're interested in learning more about transitioning to cleaner, greener landscape equipment, please visit the American Green Zone Alliance at agza.net, agza.net. But we are going to start off with a brief presentation from Kelly Nichols of the Respiratory Health Association of Chicago. She will be focused, obviously, on the lung health issues related to leaf blowers primarily, though we all know there are other health issues related to this equipment. She will then be followed by Scott Grams of the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association, and then we will have our community reports. Kelly, you're on.
Thanks, Beth. I noticed it's already 2:07, so I'm going to go as fast as I can. But I just wanted to let everybody know before I start that Respiratory Health Association is a lung health organization based in Chicago, and I'm the Advocacy and Outreach Associate for the organization. The information I'm going to be giving you today is primarily on the issues concerning pollution related to gas-powered leaf blowers. I won't be covering part of the issues that kind of come up from the particulate matter that's raised up by all leaf blowing and the destruction of habitats. That's not my wheelhouse today, so I won't be talking about it. I'm just going to be giving you an overview of information that's probably already familiar with you, but I'm also happy to follow up with more detail if you need any more information. I heard someone say slow down, but I'm going to do my best to get through this. So the engines on gas-powered leaf blowers obviously create air pollution that can cause significant impact to the lungs. A combination of chemicals, volatile organic compounds primarily, that contribute to ground level ozone, which is one of the primary ingredients in smog, as well as fine particulate matter, PM 2.5, can be inhaled by people using the equipment as well as people nearby. Even short-term exposure to particle pollution and ozone-forming chemicals generated by the machines has been proven to cause or contribute to health concerns like asthma, heart attacks, cardiovascular disease, COPD, and early death. In the air pollution world, we always talk about there is no safe level of air pollution. Daily ozone levels are typically highest in the evening after a full day of leaf blowing and lowest around sunrise. Fine particulate matter, which is called soot, refers to those tiny particles and droplets in the air that are invisible to the naked eye that are a byproduct of combustion, like auto and diesel exhaust, power plant emissions, and wood smoke. Soot can reach high levels under the same weather conditions as smog, and it can occur at any time of the year when calm air and clear conditions allow particle pollution to concentrate. It reduces visibility and causes the air to appear hazy when levels are elevated. The greatest risk for impact by this pollution is older adults, workers who use the products, children, and people with chronic illness. The particulate matter that I'll touch on briefly that's kicked up by the usage of leaf blowers can also trigger asthma attacks, worsening allergies, or COPD symptoms. One of the biggest problems with gas-powered leaf blowers is that they're oftentimes a two-stroke engine. Two-stroke engines are cheap and lightweight, but they're way dirtier and low on fuel efficiency. By design, you have to add gas and oil together as a fuel, which is combined in the combustion chamber, and as much of a third of that fuel is emitted as unburned aerosol within the exhaust product. A study in 2014 with Nature looked at two-stroke engine use in scooters in Asia and found that the VOCs emitted are 125 times higher from an idling scooter than from a truck or a car. They also create elevated particulate pollution. It was found that when these engines idle, they create benzene emissions that are as high as 146 parts per million. In the US, NIOSH recommends that workers wear special breathing equipment when exposed to benzene levels exceeding 1 part per million for 15 minutes. The EPA also did a study on gas-powered lawn maintenance equipment, and it's discovered that routine use of this equipment in the vicinity of residential neighborhoods, schools, parks, and other public spaces can expose the public to unnecessary and preventable health risks. And new equipment standards do not affect the fine particulate matter emissions. In fact, those emissions are expected to increase. And depending upon the weather in which they're used, these gas-powered leaf blowers can cause pollutants to hang out in the air for hours after they're created. To give you an idea of the levels of exposure here, an article from zmscience.com stated that the study that is referenced in that article explains that landscape workers running a leaf blower are exposed to 10 times more ultrafine particles than someone standing next to a busy road. Ultrafine particles, for reference, are the particles that get deep, deep, deep down into your lungs and can cause systemic issues like the ones I mentioned earlier. When they're used in a community, they can amplify the levels of pollution and combustion that are already there. And the big thing about lawn equipment is that large automobiles, there's a lot of studies that I'm sure you're familiar with, like the Edmunds study, where it compares the usage of gas-powered leaf blowers to the usage of cars and trucks. But the thing about that is that large automobiles, cars and trucks, even diesel motors and regular gas-powered combustion engines are regulated, and they're built to reduce and capture many, many air pollutants. If a plug-in blower is used, the power plant that it might receive its energy from has scrubbers to help reduce some types of air pollutants. And also, more and more communities are transitioning to solar and wind energy, so those amounts of emissions created by energy generation are reduced even further. And this is part of why so many people who are working on reducing emissions talk about that Edmunds study, where they found that using a two-stroke gas-powered leaf blower for 30 minutes produces pollutants equal to those generated by driving a truck 3,900 miles or from Texas to Alaska. So that's a big, broad, sweeping overview of particle pollution, ozone pollution, and the kind of pollution that impacts the lungs that are created by gas-powered leaf blowers. And I'm pretty sure that's the time that I have. So I'm going to cut off there. And if anybody has any questions, you can leave them in the chat or we can talk about them later. And I'm happy to provide links to any information that I provided.
You're muted, Beth. We can't hear you.
I was going to say, Beth, you're on mute.
Beth, you're muted. I can't, wait, I can't.
We can hear you now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm so sorry. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. And for those of you who signed on late, I just wanted to mention that we had people register from 26 suburban communities, some as far-flung as Elgin Villa Park, Naperville, Winthrop Harbor. So this is an issue that is affecting a lot of our communities all over Chicagoland. So with that, we are now going to allot 5 minutes for the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association. We do have some other landscape contractors on the call, and we felt that it was fair and important to give them time on the agenda to offer their perspective on this issue. So with that, I'd like to introduce Scott Grams of ILCA, and he will speak to you for 5 minutes. Obviously, there's much more that we, could learn from him. So if you're interested in hearing more about the industry perspective, please be sure to reach out to Scott after the meeting and ask for more time with him. Scott, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Beth. I really appreciate you giving us a voice here today. Kelly, I also look forward to following up with you later, just trying to understand why OSHA has not passed the standard yet. We just had to deal with the new silica cutting standard in our industry because of silica particles where now people have to wear respirators. And I'm wondering if potentially that might be where this is going as well as OSHA potentially gets more involved. I am the executive director of the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association. We represent over 5,000 landscape businesses and over 65,000 landscape professionals within the state of Illinois. We've been watching and monitoring this issue for the past few months, and we felt it was wise to finally step in. We feel that a lack of consultation with the landscape industry is kind of like having the wedding without the bride here. So I did have the opportunity to talk to Beth of Go Green Wilmette. And it's clear that this consortium believes gas-powered leaf blowers are a nuisance in your communities. It's also apparent that many of these communities don't trust their residents or the professional contractors who work within them to make the switch to gas-powered to electric and battery-powered alternatives without some type of government intervention. I hope my remarks today can help to change that narrative. The landscape industry is a sustainable industry. We're one of the few industries working within your communities to sequester carbon. We manage and reuse your stormwater. None of our waste materials winds up in dumpsters. We're reducing turf grass. We plant more native plants. We're creating the habitat for those pollinators that Beth talked about in her introductory remarks. Our organization hosts one of the largest sustainable landscaping conferences in the country. We do this because we care deeply about the environment that we create and maintain. And we're disappointed that none of these activities are given any carbon offset credit when looking at the positive impact that landscape professionals provide to these communities. According to the EPA, handheld equipment across all sectors accounts for 1/4% of the carbon created in the United States each year. As California debated this issue, they found that 85% of the handheld 2-stroke and 4-stroke equipment, gas-powered equipment, was actually found in the residential market owned by your residents. And then the other 15% were owned by contractors. Now, obviously, this changes by community. The more affluent suburbs will have fewer pieces of equipment at the residential level, where the less affluent suburbs will have more pieces at the residential level. But the scope of the problem, regardless of some of the arguments, is actually quite small on the environmental impact scale. And California is the only state that can create its own emission standards with a waiver from the EPA. And that process is going on right now. Now, any ordinance that bans equipment in Illinois due to emissions will be in violation of federal law. And the state of Illinois is the only authority who can police noise pollution standards. And any ordinance that disallows equipment at permitted decibel levels will be in violation of state law. Now, manufacturers now have lines of quiet gas-powered leaf blowers that are below the 65 decibel threshold, and which is the same level as normal conversation. And OSHA mandates that operators of all leaf blowers must wear ear protection. And of course, we advocate that within the landscape industry. I fear that the efficiency of commercially rated battery-powered equipment is being oversold. I'm glad that my friend Tom Klitsky is on the call from Nature's Perspective Landscaping up in Evanston. His company has eagerly made the transition to electric, and he will be the first to admit that the technology and efficiency on the commercial side is currently weak. He's someone who is trying to do better and currently cannot due to the deficiencies in the current levels of battery-powered equipment. During periods of high volume, landscape crews can service between 6 and 10 properties a day. This would require 8 to 10 batteries per blower, with no period in between to do a recharge or do a recharge remotely. The equipment is also heavier and has less blower force. Now, with that said, each and every year, this equipment does get better. As of today, manufacturers are not able to provide a battery-powered alternative at the commercial level that performs the same. Gas-powered blowers are essential tools of the landscape industry trade because they are effective and they are efficient. And once a tool becomes more effective and efficient, then the gas-powered blowers will be outmoded. This will happen sooner than you think, but manufacturers are not there yet. There are also social equity considerations to consider. Any ordinance should allow enough time for small businesses to adjust and budget for these types of bans. We have major supply line disruptions going on in our industry. We have price gouging in our industry. We have a lack of equipment and lack of batteries. And a lot of our companies are owned by Hispanics, African Americans, and/or women. Anaheim, California recently stepped back from doing a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers because of the social equity concerns. And we feel that no community should push forward with an ordinance without talking to landscape field workers or foremen who understand their experiences of actually utilizing this equipment. Their voices must be heard, and we are happy to connect any responsible decision makers with this vital perspective. The final concern has to do with enforcement. Communities must have a plan in place prior to implementation. From our experience, this should be non-confrontational and done by a civil servant experienced in issuing field citations. If enforcement is not handled well, we will continue to see residents confronting companies and workers, and many of them who are ESL. We have had employees threatened and intimidated and blamed for everything from noise to the destruction of the environment to causing and spreading disease. So we need communities to understand who will enforce this in your community. Will it be your code enforcement officials? Will it be your health department? We do not advocate utilizing the police. And make no mistake, in the absence of this, residents will fill that void. So our recommendations are as follows. We ask that these communities hold all local efforts until after California votes and is potentially granted a waiver. This will happen in early 2022. Then we recommend a 3-year phase out for residential rated equipment. This will be 85% of the equipment in many of your communities, depending on the affluency. Then we recommend a 5-year phase out for commercial rated equipment. This would be 15% of the equipment in your community. We do not recommend that you offer any type of exemptions for golf courses or your public works departments. If they are exempt in perpetuity because of their professional needs, then landscape contractors should also be exempt because of our professional needs. Then I think you need to identify who will enforce these ordinances.
Scott, you're at over 6 minutes.
I'm almost done. Will it be your code enforcement or your local law enforcement? If not, as said, residents will fill the void. And finally, I ask that we work together on a model ordinance that can be used rather than creating a patchwork of individual ordinances across many communities. So I do thank you for the time today. I apologize, Beth, for going long, but I hope that we can pass something eventually that works with and not against landscape professionals. Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Scott. There were some comments about, spending time to get the industry perspective, but I think that really is very important for us to do and fair. So with that, we're going to move on to our community reports, and we're going to start with Gita Neukirch from Highland Park. And she has been working she's the village manager, and she has been working with some other village staff in other communities. And so she is going to give a potentially longer report because it represents the efforts of a number of communities that are currently working together on this issue. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Gita.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Gita Neukirch. I'm the city manager at the city of Highland Park. And special thanks to Beth and Go Green Wilmette for inviting me and my colleagues to be part of this program this afternoon, and really our applause to all of you for coordinating these informative meetings. So I am celebrating my 28th year in local government management. I've had the pleasure of working in Highland Park, going on my 10th year now. And one of the great advantages of working for a local government, a public agency, is me and my colleagues talk on a daily basis, and we share information regularly. This allows us that when we are putting together reports and recommendations for either our appointed officials or our elected officials, we want to make sure that we are providing comprehensive information that addresses all the issues that have been raised here, that we're taking all feedback and information into perspective so our elected officials can make an informed policy decision. So that's how really we evaluate ourselves. So several weeks ago, and actually for the last several months, my colleagues and I have been talking about looking at modifications to our respective landscape regulations, with specific emphasis on the gas-powered leaf blowers, to take a look if it's warranted to make some additional modifications to our regulations. This was really as a result of a number of concerns that all of us have been hearing from our residents about the environmental concerns with our current regulations, as well as certainly with COVID, people working from home. We have gotten an increased number of noise concerns about the gas-powered equipment. And so last week, the village and city managers from Wilmette, Deerfield, Northbrook, Glencoe, and myself got together, and we put together an outline of a regional working group that would take a look at this issue and really, again, do a lot of research and get insight from various parties to make sure that we have an informed, comprehensive document that we would share with our respective municipalities. So we reached out to some other communities. So let me read to you the list of communities that have expressed an interest in working with us on this regional group. So in alphabetical order, they are Deerfield, Glencoe, Glenview, Kenilworth, Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, Highland Park, Lincolnshire, Northbrook, Wilmette, and Winnetka. And we have outreach to other municipalities as well if they're interested in the information, or of course, they're welcome to join us. The working group is going to be made up as follows. So it's going to be led by staff individuals. We will have up to 2 representatives from each municipality invited to attend. So this could be a staff person, an elected official, an appointed official. We thought it would be prudent. Many of us have sustainability advisory groups or natural resource commissions. We have human relations advisory groups. And so we want to make sure that we have those appointed representatives represented on this inclusive group. Very important to have tree company representative, landscapers, also a voice as part of this working group. Our park district in Highland Park is a separate unit of government. So we thought it'd be prudent to have park district representative, certainly Go Green representative as part of the group. And then our legal counsel will be providing us some legal assistance as well as we work through it. Number of different factors that we are going to be looking at. So this is just a very preliminary list right now, but we want to do research on existing regulations in the area. When were they adopted? What were their findings? How are the ordinances put into practice? How are they enforced? And then have any municipalities considered regulations and then rejected them? Want to take a look at noise pollution and factors associated to that, other environmental considerations, the cost of equipment for landscapers, both commercial as well as residential use. We talked about phasing in regulations, and Scott, you raised a number of good points. So we too take a look at when municipalities, if regulations are adopted, phase them in, especially for the small businesses, to give them time to make appropriate adjustments. We also talked about taking a look at some incentives or financial assistance or other assistance to organizations, particularly small businesses, just to assist them in this endeavor. Many of our regulations currently have hours of operation, so we want to review those, number of days a year, time period per year that regulations are in use. There are a number of exemptions that currently exist for many of our municipal regulations. So we want to review those exemptions, see if they still make sense, if there's others that should be implemented as well. The penalty and violation provision, what are the penalties, who is going to be doing the enforcement, how are we going to be enforcing, how is the communication to the, not only to the landscapers, but to the property owners as well. And a big part of our report that we will develop will certainly include public feedback. So not only feedback from our residents and our businesses, but the landscapers that serve our communities, as well as the professional associations as well. So that's just a snapshot of the different aspects that we will be undertaking. And then in terms of our time frame, what we want to do is before the end of the year, reach out to all the municipalities part of this working group and have them submit the names of their representatives that would be part of this group. And then we'll do a doodle poll and we'll start our work in early 22 with the goal to at least have a report and recommendation for each of our respective communities by the end of, I guess, next season. So it'll take us the bulk of 2022, and then each respective municipalities can move from there. In Highland Park, we currently license our landscapers. And so as part of our license renewal, we have also issued a survey to them and given them a heads up that we are planning to undertake this work. So we've already started to get some preliminary feedback from them in terms of what type of equipment do they have, what are some opportunities, challenges that they would envision if we make modifications to our regulations. So that survey to our licensed landscapers in Highland Park is already underway. So that is a snapshot of our work effort on a regional basis. I'm happy to entertain questions now or later.
All right. Thank you very, very much. So that was a great report and helps us see that there's a lot of collaboration already happening within our communities. So thank you so much for that report. And so that I also wanted to mention that Go Green Wilmette started collecting data, and we have a big spreadsheet that includes the ordinances and regulations and contact numbers from about 25 different suburban communities. And we'd be very happy to share that with anybody working on this, because we'd have spent quite a bit of time on that, and we'd be happy to share that. All right, so with that, I'd like to introduce Chief Mark Hornstein. He's Chief of Police in Winnetka, and he had a very unique idea early on this year, because we realized that many of our communities do have restrictions in place, and in some cases they've been in place for more than a decade, but that enforcement was really an issue that needed some work. And so Chief of Police came up with a great idea, and I'd like to give him the opportunity to explain that so that you might consider it in your community. So with that, Chief Hornstein, please, of Winnetka.
Thank you, Beth. So as Beth mentioned, Winnetka is a community that's had an ordinance in place for quite some time, dating back to 1994. And clearly what kind of brought this more to the forefront about the need to do enhanced education enforcement was the pandemic. More people working from home, clearly becoming more of a disruption from the noise that was going on. And when it kind of bubbled up to our side of it, we try to sort of look at and see what could we do differently, both from an education point of view and from enforcement. Historically, at the beginning of the season, which our seasonal ban runs from June through September, is we would mail out letters to known landscaping companies that were in the area, informing them of the seasonal ban. We did that going into this past season, but in addition to that, and I have to give credit to King Poor for his input with this as well, is that this idea of a voluntary or compliance pledge being mailed out to the known landscaping companies that we have, encouraging them to voluntarily make a signature, literally a signature pledge that they would comply with the ordinance. And as such, the Village of Winnetka would recognize each of these companies posting their name on the village website, saying that these are the companies that have signed on to the pledge. And we ended up actually with 35 companies, which we were happy with. One thing that we will do I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but for next year to improve upon that is going to be the majority of those companies did exactly what they were supposed to do, and they complied with their pledge that they took. There was a handful that we did have some violations with, and we didn't have a policy necessarily for removing them from the village website as being companies that had taken the pledge. Moving into next year, we are going to have a policy where, yes, you get a warning, but if it moves beyond one violation or two at the most, we haven't finalized that, their name is going to come off the recognition list of the village, and rightfully so. So in addition to the education and the pledge portion, we really stepped up enforcement. We made it a significant priority that to be done in a very professional manner. We ended up writing 109 citations between June and September. And I know that, Scott had mentioned concerns about the police doing enforcement for this type of action, where we've got a organization full of professionals who know how to professionally enforce ordinances and enforce laws on a daily basis, a variety of things. We were quite comfortable having our representatives do that, and they did that effectively and professionally all throughout the summer. Additionally, moving forward, and I don't want to speak for them because I know they're not on the call, but I have done outreach to our local schools, specifically New Trier High School and the Winnetka Park District, and told them about our involvement here this past year, what we've done, and our collaboration during these meetings, and asked them if they would consider getting on board with making improvements with their operations going to next year, because they have in-house landscaping, right? They don't have contractors that come in. They do their own in-house landscaping. And again, not to speak for them, but very positively received from New Trier and from the Winnetka Park District, where they would be willing to do a gradual phase-in approach when they have to replace equipment that will be battery powered. And they understand the concerns and the commitment to making a safer environment in the community. And that is my report.
All right, thank you so much. Again, someone wasn't clear. There have been laws on the books since 1994 in Winnetka, and they have been repeatedly not obeyed by lawn care companies. And so the chief sent a letter to, I think, 70 different companies saying, we know you are law abiding and we expect you to obey our laws, and we'd like you to pledge that you will do so. And the impact was quite extraordinary. And it was simply to obey a law that had been on the books now for decades. All right, with that, we're going to hear from Eleanor Ravel. She is an alderperson in Evanston, and hopefully she is going to speak up, and then I can put the pin on her. Eleanor?
Yep, I'm here. There we go.
Great.
Well, thank you very much. These series of meetings are really so helpful, I think, to all of us as we struggle with this issue. Evanston too has had a leaf blower ordinance for years and years, but growing unhappiness in the community with both enforcement and the fact and feeling that it wasn't a strong enough ordinance, that we really wanted to move away from gas-powered leaf blowers altogether. So we did a survey, and we had town hall meetings where we invited residents and landscaping contractors to share their thoughts about further regulations. And over the summer, oh gosh, wouldn't you know? Sorry. So ultimately we came up, we drafted a stronger ordinance. We took it out of our noise ordinance and we put it into the sort of the health department area of our city code. And basically, the main part of it is that the use of gas and propane powered leaf blowers will no longer be permitted after April 1st, 2023. So we do recognize that we need a transition. We recognize that that's a pretty ambitious timeline. After April 1st, 2023, electric leaf blowers will be permitted, but we're also saying that a portable generators to power the electric leaf blower or to recharge leaf blower batteries will not be permitted either. So we want the electric equipment to be totally electric. Before April 1st, 2023, we're continuing with our seasonal ban. We currently say gas and propane powered leaf blowers may be used only between March 30th and May 15th. And then again in the fall cleanup, October 15th to the first Thursday in December. And that timeframe hasn't changed very much over the time. We also made some adjustments to the hours when leaf blowers can be used, all kinds of leaf blowers. And unfortunately, we made that change in the spring during the course of a council discussion. So it was not, in my view, a very thoughtful conversation. The change was really made pretty spontaneously. And I think we need to go back and revisit those hours, because currently we say you can't start using a leaf blower on a Monday or Monday through Saturday until 9 a.m. I think that's overly restrictive. So I think we need to revisit the hours that we have for our leaf blowers. And we do have some limited exceptions. For the city, it's our baseball fields and it's our artificial, we have one area where we have artificial turf where they use, they have to blow the rainwater off of the grass. For our golf courses, our Canal Shores Golf Course, the in-play area of the golf course, they're permitted still to use a gas-powered leaf blower, and they're committed as soon as the equipment is available commercially to move to a electric system, they'll do that. And then thirdly, construction projects where they're paving and repairing and patching the streets, they're allowed to use a gas-powered leaf blower. And we also said that any type of blower for pesticides is prohibited as well. So now for the enforcement, I mean, that's really a very important piece of this. And when I think about enforcement, I really think about the huge educational component of enforcement. And so we are in 2022, we're going to be hiring an environmental health inspector. And that person's job will be big education effort in the community, both with the contractors and with property owners. And then that person will be charged with actually enforcing the ordinance. But my hope is that as we do a better job with education, we won't be having to issue tickets, and people will be complying because they know what is expected of them. And I think that's super fast summary.
All right, thank you very much. Kudos to everybody for your speed dating skills. We were really doing a great job. So next on the list, we're going to be hearing from Glencoe. Glencoe has a very, very active sustainability task force that's been working on this. We're going to first hear from Hall Healy, who's on that task force. And after Hall, we're going to hear from the staff liaison to the task force, Jeff Maudsley. So with that, good. We've got the screen sharing and we'll start the timer again. Glencoe.
Thanks very much, Beth. We'll try to stick to things that are a little different than what other people have mentioned. We already have limits, which we plan to extend over time. We want this to be a gradual program. Our initial timing is spring of 2024. I can understand Scott's point of view, and as we get into this, more deeply, things may change, but it is our intent to eventually ban leaf blowers. We think that education is a key component of this for landscapers as well as residents to understand why we're doing this so that we get compliance and understanding along the way. We also want this to be a collaborative exercise with us as residents and as well as landscapers and our various governmental entities, park district, school district, and so on. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's plenty out there that is already being done. And we want to tap into that. And that's part of why we want to be collaborative. We also want to link with other entities, other groups locally, nationally, that are involved in this so that we're tapping into the best minds and programs that are out there. Again, part of not when we get into how we implement this program, we want to look at cost and performance data of alternatives. We want to look at discounts. And we think one of the reasons for collaborating, one of the benefits that we hope will be there because of that, is that we might be able to tap grant funding that wouldn't be available to a single community, but might be available to multiple communities to help ease the pain on this transition. And again, to get the best solutions. This funding might be local, state, or nationally. We also want to touch on what someone else already mentioned, enforcement, and how do we put the teeth into this that will be effective in getting compliance. Glencoe is part of an eco district program that's international. And we find that this banning of gas-powered leaf blowers fits very well in that whole context. So that's another plus for us in doing this. If there are questions later, that's fine, but that's my brief summary.
All right, thank you very much, Hall. Did Jeff have anything to add, or was he your tech assistant?
He does have something to add.
Okay, Jeff, you're on.
The only thing I have to add is that the village of Glencoe is also starting to phase in battery powered backpack leaf blowers. We purchased a few last year and we have plans to purchase more. Our experience is still limited with them, so I don't have anything to report on in terms of whether they're more or less effective. But I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, you know, the village does plan to hold itself to the same high standards as you would landscaping companies and contractors.
All right.
Beth, could I add one more item? We
Sure.
feel that this whole program is within a larger context. We're calling it Leave the Leaves. We're encouraging people this season to leave the leaves in their gardens to help amend the soil, provide habitat for insects and animals over the winter. Again, banning leaf blowers is part of that whole idea.
Yeah, that's a very, very important additional cause of concern. Many of you know about what they're calling the insect Armageddon. As we eliminate habitat for insects, these beneficial insects they don't have a chance. So that's a very important educational component that I think all of our communities are thinking about. All right, thank you very, very much. And with that, we're going to move to the village of Wilmette, and we're going to hear from Michael Brayman. He is the village manager there, and he is very interested in this topic, as is our village president, Senta Plunkett, and our trustees. So with that, Michael, if you can speak, I can pin you.
All right, thank you, Beth. Appreciate you inviting me to speak. I will be brief to respect everybody's time and give others an opportunity. First, we're very excited to participate in the working group that Gita described it at the beginning. I think for anything that we do to be successful, it needs to be a regional effort, and we all need to have consistent regulations and processes in place. It's only fair to the landscapers. That's the way it'll make it possible to enforce whatever ultimately is the outcome of the working group's report. So we're really excited to participate. And Scott, I really appreciate your comments. I think those viewpoints and perspectives are going to be really important to what we do in the working group, because we don't want to implement regulations that cannot be enforced. And I think that was the struggle we've had in Wilmette since our ordinance was in place in 2006, was our inability to effectively enforce that. And we were setting expectations for the community on something we couldn't deliver. And that's going to be important for all of us as we work forward here to a solution that it works for everybody. So thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. In Wilmette, we took a different approach this year. In 2020, during the pandemic, I got more complaints about leaf blower noise and nuisance than I did anything else. And obviously that's because a lot of folks were working from home, typically would not be. So we made the decision this year to hire a new part-time employee specifically responsible for enforcing our seasonal leaf blower ban from a portion of May through the end of September. It was really effective, and we received outstanding feedback from the community, and that there was a noticeable difference in terms of the noise pollution experienced throughout Wilmette. So we're really excited by that success. We're going to continue to move forward in that direction next year. A couple of important points is that while we were proactively enforcing the ordinance, we actually did not fine a single company. We issued citations. We did not cite the worker, we cited the company, because ultimately the company is responsible and they're directing their employees, and we wanted to be sensitive to the social justice components of that. But what we did is if somebody received a citation and if they were able to show compliance by purchasing a battery or electric power leaf blower before their court date, we waived the fine. And that ended up being very effective. So I'm hopeful that through these efforts, some of our neighboring communities as well also experience less noise pollution because obviously landscapers work across all of our boundaries. So we're going to continue that effort. Scott, I think I saw an email from you earlier. I appreciate that feedback as well and look forward to the working group's work in 2022.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. One thing that Wilmette had proposed to Wilmette, our village government, is that we believe that our residents should be at least notified when the companies that they employ break Wilmette laws, and that they did start leaving a door hanger if I believe if the company was written up for the Michael, is that in fact what happened?
Yes, yeah, we did produce door hangers. You know, we had talked about citing the homeowner. We felt that was a bridge too far for us at this point, but we did want to notice the property owner so that they could have a conversation with their contractor and help us move towards compliance.
Yeah, thank you. We do feel that in many cases, landscape contractors believe they are providing the service that their customers demand. And so that is really an important piece of the education to help residents understand, first of all, there are laws on the books that should be obeyed, and that there's a downside to the excessive leaf blowing that happens just by default. If you interact with your contractor and you ask him to provide a different kind of a service, they will do that. But until someone asks for less leaf blowing, they're going to continue to provide that service because that's what they expect their customer wants. Thank you very much to Wilmette. You have really taken this issue on and made great strides. With that, we're now going to hear from the village of Northbrook, one of our larger communities, and we're going to be hearing from Tessa Murray. She is the sustainability coordinator of Northbrook. And I believe Northbrook is not quite as far along on this path as many of the communities that we've heard from. But Tessa, are you ready?
Yes, thank you. And thanks to Go Green for providing me this opportunity, the platform to discuss this issue. Northbrook looks forward to participating in the regional approach that City Manager Gita mentioned. In Northbrook, we don't currently require landscapers to register, so we believe that utilizing our neighbors' registration list will be a huge asset for outreach. We also just have a noise ordinance that limits the time of day, but there's no seasonal ban or anything like that in place currently. So for this working group, we really look forward to a multi-community initiative that will incorporate as many viewpoints as possible to ensure that whatever decision is made in Northbrook is an equitable approach, considering the issues of health, safety, and the economic vitality of small businesses that may be disproportionately impacted if not otherwise included in these conversations. So we really look forward to learn from the larger group and from opportunities like this to discuss. And thank you for that. And we'll also just be bringing whatever findings we have with this larger group back to our Sustainability Commission, who will then make a recommendation to our Board of Trustees. And hopefully this will be happening sooner rather than later, because we do have a lot of public comment and interest in our community and seeing something put forward.
All right, thank you very much, Tessa. We don't have a speaker from Glenview. We thought we might. Glenview is just beginning to look into this issue, and it sounds like they have been invited to collaborate with other communities as they look at restrictions.
Hello,
So
Beth. This is Mary Monday in Glenview.
yes, would you like to say something briefly?
Only that we are at the community education and consciousness raising level. Our green group just began in October. And so it is on our program agenda as an idea to do. We think education is the place to start in Glenview. That's all.
Okay, great. Now, it's been a little hard to keep track of all the chats. There's been a lot going on. So it is already 2:54. We did promise this would be a 1-hour meeting. And okay, Hall Healy from Glencoe wants to call people's attention to the fact that he put a link in. They have written their whole draft plan, and it is posted on the Glencoe web community, the town of Glencoe's website. One of the things that's great about working in the collaboration is that none of these communities have to start from scratch. You can take somebody else's working plan, adopt it to work, but I do understand why it would be so beneficial to try to have these regulations be consistent. Many of these companies work across borders, and they may not even know when they've left Wilmette and entered Northfield. So it would be very helpful if we had more consistent regulations. So huge thanks to the village managers, village staff, and elected officials who have decided that this is going to be an issue that they're going to take up. And it sounds like they understand that a graduated approach is a phased-in approch is fair to all, so they can adjust to it. And so a couple questions. Sarah Sanford, she's the head of Go Green at Northbrook. She said, so what will happen to all the old gas-powered leaf blowers? You know, are they just going to get sold at a discount and used other places? That's a really interesting topic. I know with electric buses, if you get you have to retire an old diesel bus and put it out of commission in order to get some of the funding for a new electric bus. Okay, so we've got Ben from Naperville. He asked, do any communities here have experience offering incentives to encourage the retirement of gas-powered lawn equipment and purchase of electric battery-powered versions? Let's see, Gita, will your group be looking, Gita from Highland Park, will your group be looking at any kind of buyback programs?
Yes, yeah, that is one factor that we're going to be taking a look at, that as well as other incentives and financial assistance.
Okay, great. Just saw a quick message from Edith Macra. She's with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. That is a group that represents nearly 300 communities. This group, we had people from almost 10% of those communities. So they're watching, you know, our collaboration, and there are many, many other suburbs that would be very interested in working on this same issue. All right, so we just have time for a few more questions. We are going to end at 3 o'clock. And wow, there are lots of questions. So check through the chat, all of you, to see whether there's information that would be useful. As I said, this meeting has been recorded and it will be uploaded to the Go Green Wilmette YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube, Google Go Green Wilmette, and by tomorrow you will see that this meeting is there. If you're in a community that has not been focused on this issue yet, please be sure to send the meeting link to especially elected officials and staff. It's great to have a lot of advocates, and it's good for us to give our feedback to our elected officials and staff, but ultimately those are the people that are going to be reviewing ordinances and changing, or in fact enforcing, and sometimes it's just a matter of enforcing them. So I will quickly try to look at some of these other, Grays Lake may have a little bit of a buyback. Make sure you talk in the chat to anyone that you wanted to connect with. And I did say to Scott with ILCA, if the Landscape Contractors Association wants to provide a forum like this, to have people come to a forum that you've set up so that you can continue to share your perspective, by all means, feel free to do that. And so someone also mentioned whether or not anyone's looking at other kind of lawn care equipment. The lawn care industry, all of this equipment is going to be transitioning to cleaner electric equipment, just like the auto industry is. It's moving. It's going to be moving very, very quickly. And we do understand that this is hard on the industry and for all the companies that invested in equipment that within several years will no longer probably be allowed. So with that, I am going to thank you again. Thank you again for coming and for focusing on this issue for an hour today. If your community is not currently doing anything, please make sure you follow contact Gita from Highland Park, and you can find her. She's the village manager there. If you think your community should be part of that collaboration, make sure that you contact her and ask to be included.
Yeah, and Beth, just a point about your point about phasing out equipment. Your average commercial grade leaf blower is usually only going to last 2 to 3 seasons anyway. So these are being recycled, and companies are purchasing more and more as they go, just based on use. It's very different from automobiles or something like that. So the industry evolving quickly is very important, because landscapers are always in the market to replace certain percentages of their handheld fleet.
Right, great. So we appreciate the openness of the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association to recognize that this is the way the industry is going, and that they are looking for ways to help their members adapt to new conditions. And so with that, thank you very, very much. And you can see that Gita has put her email in the chat. And with that, I'm going to conclude and thank you very much, all of you, for spending an hour with us. I'm not going to end the meeting, but so I'm not going to sign off immediately, but this is the end of our official meeting, and I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you.